All right, good morning and welcome to the week starter edition of News Express, exclusively brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. We've got a whole lot of really catchy headlines hitting the front page of Business AM this morning, and topping the front page, I have this one on the power sector now. Biden power tariff back in disguise hits Nigerians hard with outrageous bills, rapid depletion of energy units. And we have another bullet headline here. Consumers blame the government and regulatory authority. And just below that headline, we have this one. Nigeria's lost global agricultural export earnings put at $242 billion. We also have a breakdown of the different agricultural products and the export earnings just beside it on the cover page. Over to the summary section now. Higbeti, the Lagos Economic Summit, begins tomorrow. That's Tuesday. Under the finance and investment section, we have FAC allocation to federal government drops 62% still on estimated billing. That's from the energy, power and renewable section. And over to the insurance and business section, we have insurance digitization can mitigate. That's on page 13 of Business AM. And lastly, the last headline I'll pick here on technology and innovation segment. Google Play earns $38.9 billion. All of that and more you can find on Business AM this morning. Of course, I've got Mr. Philip Isakwa, the publisher of Business AM, joining me for conversations. Good morning, Mr. Philip. It's good to have you on the show again.
Yeah, good morning, Rachel. How was your weekend?
Oh, my weekend was fantastic. It was okay. How was yours?
Good.
All right, now let's get right into the headline. Now, just the reaction to the very first headline on the cover page. The electricity bill for last month was pretty outrageous, Mr. Philip. It came in much more than what is paid monthly for an apartment. There were a lot of complaints, when the bills came out over the weekend. Yeah, for some over the weekend, just for last month. Then is this the result of the 50% hike in tariff by NERC, of course, following the revision of the MYTO, or are the discos up to something else now?
Rachel, remember we talked about this electricity bill. The increase at 50% increase was a major story some weeks ago, and we had a good discussion about this. And I did mention to you that something else was going to come up. What did the government do? There was going to be there were some protests, I believe.
Yes.
The labor was angry. Manufacturers were angry, and then government said pull back a little. They gave an extension of 1 month. Remember, suspend this for 1 month. And let us talk. They were talking in the background. But I did mention to you, Rachel, that even if there was going to be a stepping down of that tariff that was increased by 50%, that government was desirous to move back to what was agreed some years ago, which was that the tariffs were going to be determined by the negotiation based on the MY.
The MYTO, yes.
Yes, the MYTO, yes. And I said to you that that was going to kick in, that no matter, we even thought that, this will kick in much later in the year. That we were suggesting by the first quarter or towards second quarter that was going to kick in. Now, but what has happened is that Afcon suspended it. What we have noticed, from talking to consumers like yourself, you did mention you noticed it over the weekend. But some people had been noticing it a long time. It appears as if what we discovered is appears as if the discourse, decided to do something that was, continue to push up unmetered consumers, And then the other thing was some people were discovering that when they bought electricity, that the electricity was finishing up much earlier than before. So almost like this before the end of the month, those people before the end of January, those who were facing this kind of action from the discos, was that the discos were now implementing, even though the discussion had not finished or the end of January had not come. But I believe that there's been some quietness about it. No discussion. Nobody has come up to say, oh, this was how we went. But what it is that this has now come into force. The increase that was announced, that was suspended, has now come into force. In the midst of all the quietness or the lack of noise, people are beginning to see this road into what the bills that they're getting, and which you have confirmed yourself that that you got yourself, or you noticed that other people got. So that's the situation.
All right, let's move over to the other headline now about the Ehigbeti Summit. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly now, which is going to kick off tomorrow and is themed for a greater Lagos. Now, according to the paper, some key speakers at the summit will include Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Mo Ibrahim, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, amongst others. What topics will take center stage in this summit?
I think what we're hearing, setting the tone for the next decade, is the major theme of the Ehigbeti Summit. Now, recall that Ehigbeti was initiated, if I'm correct, during the Fashola regime. No, I don't think it was Bola Tinubu, but for the avoidance of any conflict in that. But I know that Fashola duly pushed it seriously. Now, Ehigbeti, Lagos is a major economic center, for Nigeria. And you cannot talk about Lagos without talking about the economy. And the summit, was set, from my involvement in terms of coverage and following the summit from time, was that Ehigbeti is based on developing economic blueprint, seeing how Lagos can continue to push forward. Now, you have Mo Ibrahim will be speaking. This year, because of the coronavirus pandemic, it's going to be a virtual summit. So again, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, that you have just mentioned, will be speaking. Good eating, perhaps an opportunity to hear her speak about speak to our policy, what she intends to do at the WTO. When she becomes Director General, when she assumes that office, we'll probably be hearing more of that, and perhaps how Lagos can connect globally, because Lagos ought to be, being a mega city, ought to connect globally. Sometimes I often say that you must look beyond your immediate territory, depending on who you are and what position you seek to occupy. Lagos should be thinking London, should be thinking New York, should be thinking Tokyo, and be comparing itself with cities like that, and be ramping up a lot of development, whether in the area of transportation, whether in the area of education, health, and other social infrastructure. It ought to be preparing itself to compete with New York, with Tokyo, with London, and so on and so forth. Akinwumi Adesina will be speaking, and then we have Oscar Onyema. Of course, you want to generate, you want to raise money, you want to raise capital. The stock market, you have to avail yourself of the stock market and get yourself really, really into the deep end of capital raising.
Yes.
So it's a good thing. We hope to hear, since they are looking ahead to the next decade, we hope to hear the governor speak and hear what exactly he has in terms, especially the economic framework, economic blueprint, and the economic policies he intends to use to attract the global market to focus on Lagos and see how Lagos grows.
Interesting. We'll look out for that summit tomorrow. And meanwhile, there are other really catchy headlines on Business AM this morning, especially on the commodities and agricultural section of the paper, pages 24 and 25. Readers can turn their attention to that space. I think we'll have to draw the curtain here because we're short of time, Mr. Philip. I'll get back to you on Friday for developing stories this week and, of course, what to expect from the paper next week. Thank you so much for doing this with me.
Thank you, Rachel. Have a wonderful day.
You too. And that was Philip Isakwa, the publisher, Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper.
Breakfast Plug and Breakfast Connect, only on Africa Business Radio.